The wind howled like a beast outside the human outpost. Snow covered everything in white. Ice hung from the roofs. The blizzard had been going for 2 days without stopping. No one went outside unless it was an emergency. Inside the warm building, Jack sat near the window, staring at the storm. He was a repairman, assigned to this alien colony on the frozen planet of Velmara. Most humans didn't like working here. It was too cold, too quiet. But Jack didn't mind. He was sipping hot tea when he heard it. At first he thought it was the wind. A soft sound, almost like a cry. He leaned closer to the window and listened. There it was again. A small, broken sound. Faint. Like a child crying. Jack frowned. He opened the comms channel. Anyone else hear that? Just the wind. Jack, replied Officer Hale from the radio. Don't go out, this storm is deadly. But Jack couldn't ignore it. Something in his heart said it wasn't just the wind. He grabbed his thermal coat, gloves, and boots. He clipped on his breathing mask and pulled the visor over his eyes. Jack, are you crazy? Hale shouted through the radio. Where are you going? Just checking. I won't go far, Jack replied. He stepped outside. The cold slapped him in the face like ice knives. The wind almost pushed him back, but he pushed forward. Visibility was low, just a few feet. Snow flew everywhere. Then he heard it again. Clearer this time. A child. Crying. Jack followed the sound, holding a flashlight in one hand. His boots crunched in the deep snow. After about 50 meters, the beam of light landed on a small shape, near a half-broken wall. His heart jumped. It was a child. An alien child. The child was kneeling, half buried in snow. His arms were wrapped around his chest, and his purple skin was turning blue from cold. His clothes were torn. He looked no older than 5. Jack rushed forward and knelt beside him. The boy looked up with wide, watery eyes. Mama, he whispered. Jack wrapped the boy in his coat. You're safe now, he said gently. Where is your mother? The boy pointed toward the mountains, his hand trembling. She said, wait here. She went to find help. Jack looked in the direction the boy pointed. There was nothing but ice and rocks. No shelter. No people. He looked back at the child. No mother would leave her child alone in this storm unless she had no choice. Jack stood up, holding the boy close. We'll find her, don't worry. The boy rested his head on Jack's chest, too weak to speak. Jack turned around and headed back, but stopped. Footprints, tiny alien footprints, partly covered by new snow, were leading away from the child. They were light and shaky, and they were going toward the cliffs. Jack didn't hesitate. He followed them. Each step was harder. The storm grew stronger. Snow filled his visor. His hands were numb even through the gloves, but he didn't stop. The child shivered in his arms. Jack spoke softly to him. Stay with me, little guy. We're going to find her. I promise. He followed the trail for 20 minutes. Then, just before the footprints ended, he saw a dark opening in the rocks, a cave. Jack stepped inside. The wind stopped instantly, and silence fell. He turned on his flashlight and gasped. A woman lay on the ground, half covered in snow. Her skin was pale. Her eyes were shut. Her arms were curled as if she had been trying to protect something. Next to her was a torn piece of cloth, a baby's blanket. Jack rushed to her side. Ma'am, he said, shaking her gently. Can you hear me? Her eyes flickered open. When she saw the child in his arms, her lips moved. My baby, she whispered. Is he okay? Jack nodded. He's alive. He's cold but alive. Tears filled her eyes. She tried to sit up but failed. You shouldn't have left the shelter, Jack said, trying to warm her hands. You'll die out here. The alien woman smiled weakly. I would die. For him. Her voice was soft but full of love. Jack had never seen such pain and strength in one person. He looked at both of them, the mother and the child, two strangers. And yet, he couldn't leave them. He opened his comm again. "This is Jack. I found 2 survivors. The woman is weak. The child's freezing. I need help. Fast." But the radio only crackled. The storm had cut the signal. Jack was on his own. He looked at them again, then pulled the mother closer under his coat. "You're not dying today," he whispered. The snowstorm outside the cave didn't stop. It roared louder, like a monster screaming into the night. Inside, Jack held both the alien child and the weak mother close under his coat. The small boy had fallen asleep from exhaustion. But the mother, she was slipping in and out of consciousness. Her skin was freezing, her breathing was shallow. Jack's radio was still dead. The storm had completely blocked the signal. He knew one thing: they couldn't stay here. He looked at the cave walls, dark, cold, lifeless. This place was just a shallow hole in the rock. No warmth, no help, no future. Jack looked down at the mother again. She had risked everything, walking in the blizzard alone, just to find help for her child. That kind of love, it wasn't something he saw often. Jack whispered, "Don't worry, I'll get you both out of here." He unwrapped one of his emergency heat pads and activated it. The soft glow lit the cave. He pressed it gently to the mother's chest, her eyes fluttered open. Weakly, she stared at him. "Why?" she whispered. Jack met her gaze. "Because your child cried in the storm." "I couldn't ignore that." The woman blinked. She didn't understand why a human would help her. Her kind and Jack's kind didn't mix. But this man wasn't like the others. Jack gently picked up the boy and helped the mother sit against the wall. Then he noticed something: footprints. In the far corner of the cave, barely visible under some fallen snow, were more footprints, bigger ones, fresh. Jack narrowed his eyes. Someone else was here. He stood, flashlight in hand, and walked deeper toward the back of the cave. There was a narrow path leading downward, rocky, slippery, but clearly used. Jack turned back. "Is there someone else?" The alien woman shook her head slowly. "No. Only me." Jack stared down the dark path. The snow on the floor wasn't disturbed much, but those prints, they weren't hers. And they weren't the boys. They were heavy, wider, and the shape, not human, not her species either. He returned quickly to the mother. "Someone was watching you. Maybe even following." Her face went pale. I thought I heard something, but I was so tired." Jack felt his gut twist. Something wasn't right. But first he had to get them out. He pulled out his emergency sled from his survival pack. It folded out like a thin, smooth board with heat padding underneath. Carefully, he placed the child on the sled and helped the woman lie beside him. He wrapped them both in his thick thermal blanket and strapped them in. "You'll be okay," Jack said, though he wasn't fully sure. As he stepped outside the cave, the storm hit again, stronger, colder. But this time, he didn't stop. With a rope tied around his waist and the sled attached, he pulled both of them through the snow. Step by step, inch by inch. His visor fogged up. His legs felt like stone. Every breath burned his lungs, but he didn't stop. After nearly 15 minutes, the wind dropped for just a moment. A strange silence fell. Jack paused. Crunch. He heard it behind him. Footsteps, slow, heavy, not from the sled. Jack turned his flashlight. Behind him, nothing. Only blowing snow. But the noise came again. Crunch. He spun around and saw it, a tall, shadowy figure at the edge of the blizzard, watching, not moving. Just watching. Its eyes glowed faintly in the white darkness. Jack's heart pounded. "Who's there?" No reply. The figure turned and vanished into the storm. Jack's hand hovered near his weapon, but he didn't fire. He looked down at the alien child still sleeping and the mother barely conscious. He couldn't stop now. "Whatever you are," he muttered. Stay away. After what felt like hours, Jack saw lights in the distance, faint, blinking red and yellow. The outer lights of the outpost. Relief flooded him, but just then, growls. From both sides, snow wolves, 3 of them, their white fur blended perfectly with the snow. But their yellow eyes and sharp teeth were clear. Jack pulled the sled close and stood in front of it. He didn't have time for fear. The mother behind him stirred, whispering, "Sound. Loud sound. Scares them." Jack reached into his coat and pulled out his audio emitter. It could produce powerful, high-pitched sound waves. He cranked it up and pressed the button. A loud, painful screech filled the air. The wolves backed away, howling, confused and angry. But then, rumble. The mountainside shook. The noise had triggered something worse, an avalanche. Jack turned in horror as snow and ice began to fall from above. He jumped over the mother and child, using his body as a shield. Everything went white. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then Jack felt pressure, heavy, crushing pressure, on his back. He opened his eyes slowly. White. Nothing but white. Snow covered everything. His ears rang. His body was stiff and frozen. But under him, there was warmth. He had shielded them. He pushed with all his strength. His arms trembled. Muscles screamed. But he didn't stop. With one final grunt, Jack broke through the snow and gasped for air. Cold air. But it was still air. He was alive. He looked down. The mother and child were under the thermal blanket, both still breathing. Barely. "Thank God," Jack whispered. But they couldn't last much longer. His emitter was broken. The sled was half buried and damaged. His radio still dead, and now they were trapped in a snow basin caused by the avalanche. Jack crawled out and looked around. No path forward, no road back, just walls of ice and snow. They were stuck. He had to act fast. Jack began digging with his hands. Every second counted. He dug through ice and rocks, trying to make space around the sled. Then he remembered. His last heat flare. It was a compact emergency tool designed for survival in freezing temperatures. One use only. He pulled it from his belt and slammed it on the ground. Phoom! A burst of orange light lit the snow. Warmth spread in a small circle. It wasn't enough for long, but enough for now. He moved the mother and child into the circle and checked them both. The child stirred. Eyes opened slowly. Jack smiled. "Hey, little one. Still with me?" The boy gave a weak nod and whispered, "Cold. I know, buddy. I'm working on that." Then Jack turned to the mother. Her lips were blue. Her breathing was slower. He checked her pulse, weak, but still there. He opened his coat and wrapped it around her more tightly, then pulled both closer to the heat flare. Still, it wasn't enough. He needed help. He needed rescue. He looked at the sky, gray, stormy, hopeless. Then an idea came. The signal flare. Not a radio, just light. Maybe someone would see it. Maybe. He aimed it up. "Please," he whispered and fired. A red ball of light shot into the sky. It hung there, glowing in the clouds, then faded. Jack waited. 1 minute. 2. Nothing. Then, a blinking light. Far away. Yellow, moving. A drone. Jack jumped up, waving his arms. "Here, over here." The drone hovered, scanning, then turned and flew back the way it came. Jack smiled. They saw us. 10 minutes later, a rescue team arrived. 2 snowmobiles. 4 medics. Wrapped in thick suits, they rushed to Jack, then to the alien mother and child. "She's bad," one medic said. "We need to move now." They placed her in a thermal pod and gave the child warm fluids. Jack collapsed nearby, exhausted. "You did good, sir," a medic told him. "If you hadn't found them..." Jack didn't reply. He just looked at the mother as they lifted her into the sled. Even unconscious, she reached toward her child. Jack gently placed the boy in her arms. Hours later, in the medbay, the alien Mother lay in a warm bed, hooked to machines. Her child slept beside her, safe and warm. Jack sat nearby, bandaged but okay. The nurse said she would wake soon. Jack stared at her face. Even now, she looked like she was in pain. But she had survived. Because she never gave up on her child, and Jack never gave up on them. A soft voice broke the silence. Where? Jack turned. Her eyes were open. Hey, he said gently. You're safe now. She blinked slowly, looked around, then saw her child. She gasped and reached out weakly. He's okay, Jack said. He made it. She clutched her son and began to cry, soft tears, not of pain, but of relief. Then she looked at Jack. You saved us. Jack nodded. She stared at him like he was a miracle. Why would a human help someone like me? Jack smiled, because no mother should die in the snow, and no child should be left alone in the cold. The storm had passed. The sky was still gray, but the blizzard was gone. Snow lay thick across the colony grounds like a silent blanket. Inside, the medbay, the alien mother sat up slowly in bed. Her arms were wrapped tightly around her son, who was now fast asleep beside her. Machines blinked gently and soft heat filled the room. Jack stood near the window, sipping warm water. He had barely slept. He couldn't stop thinking about those footprints in the cave and the glowing eyes that watched him during the rescue. Someone, or something, had been there. And it wasn't just the snow wolves. Jack turned and saw the mother watching him. She looked better now. Her color had returned, and her voice was stronger. But her eyes still held fear. You saw it too, didn't you? She whispered. Jack froze. You mean the thing in the storm? She nodded slowly. It was tall, quiet. It followed us for days. Jack walked closer. Do you know what it was? The woman lowered her gaze. Not for sure, but some say the mountains are cursed, that something lives in the storm, watching, waiting. Jack frowned. You think it was hunting you? No, she whispered. Not me. My child. Later that day, the colony commander called Jack in. The commander, a tall, gray-haired man with sharp eyes, sat behind his desk, arms crossed. You risked your life for an alien woman and her kid, he said. Why? Jack replied simply, because they were dying. You broke protocol. I followed my heart. The commander leaned forward. Well, your heart caused a rescue team to enter a dangerous zone during a level 5 storm, and now there's talk of a creature in the snow? Jack nodded. I saw something, I don't know what, but it wasn't natural. The commander raised a brow. We'll send scouts. In the meantime, you're on rest duty. Jack didn't argue. He just left. That night, Jack returned to the medbay. The child was awake now, eating warm soup. He looked up at Jack and smiled. You came back? Jack chuckled. Of course I did, little guy. What's your name? The boy hesitated, then said, softly, Thalor. Jack nodded. Nice to meet you, Thalor. Then the mother spoke. My name is Ailari. I didn't get a chance to thank you properly. Jack looked at her. You don't have to. Just seeing you both alive. That's thanks. Enough. But Ailari shook her head. No. You need to hear this. She took a deep breath. My people. We were once many. But the storms took most of us. Some say it's the cold. But others, they believe a being lives in the blizzards, feeding off lost souls. It takes the weakest first. Children, elders. Jack narrowed his eyes. You think this thing wanted your son? Ailari nodded. He's the last child born in our tribe. If he dies and we die out. We die. A cold chill went down Jack's spine. The next morning, alarms rang through the colony. A scout patrol had vanished. Their signals stopped near the same area Jack had found the cave. No bodies, no gear, just snow. Jack's hands tightened into fists. He knew. The thing in the storm wasn't done. He rushed to the med bay. Ilari and Thaler were already being moved by security. Guards surrounded them. "What's going on?" Jack asked. The medic looked nervous. "Command thinks someone, or something, is targeting them. They're being relocated to the underground bunker." "Let me go with them," Jack said. "Denied," said one of the guards, but Ilari reached out. "He's the only one we trust." The guard hesitated, then nodded. As the group moved through the snow tunnels under the colony, Jack walked beside Thaler and Ilari. The boy looked up at him. "Will the snow monster come again?" Jack knelt beside him. "Not while I'm here, I promise." But deep inside, Jack wasn't sure he could keep that promise. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He kept seeing glowing eyes in his dreams. When he finally opened his eyes, his room was dark. Cold, too cold. He stood up and opened the door, and saw footprints. Wet, icy footprints, leading down the hallway. Not human. Jack grabbed his coat and followed. The trail led down to the lower tunnels, past the storage rooms, straight toward the bunker, straight toward Ilari and Thaler. The footprints were fresh. Wet snow dripped from them, but there were no signs of anyone nearby. Jack moved fast, staying low. The hall was silent, but the air felt wrong. It was colder than before, unnaturally cold. His breath came out in thick clouds, and the lights above flickered as if something disturbed the energy. He followed the strange trail down the underground corridor. Each step led closer to the bunker, closer to Ilari and her child. His heart pounded. As he neared the final corner, he paused. A soft sound came through the air, like whispering, but it wasn't in any language he knew. Jack clenched his fists and turned the corner. The hallway was empty, except for the door to the bunker. It was wide open. Inside, 2 guards were unconscious on the floor, pale and freezing. Frost covered the walls. Jack rushed in. "Ilari, Thaler!" He searched the beds, the corners, nothing. Then he saw it. In the far wall was a hole carved by claws, large, sharp, icy, not natural. And outside that hole in the deep snow tunnel were drag marks. Something, or someone, had taken them. Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed one guard's flashlight and ran into the tunnel, following the marks. The air grew thinner as Jack moved deeper underground. Snow coated the walls. His boots sank with every step, but he kept moving. He thought of Ilari's face, her soft voice, her courage. He thought of little Thaler reaching for his mother's hand. He couldn't let them die, not after everything. Then up ahead he saw light, a soft, glowing blue light, not from his flashlight. He approached slowly, and gasped. They were there, Ilari and Thaler, frozen in place inside a thin wall of ice, still breathing, still alive, but trapped. Standing beside them was a creature Jack had never seen before. It was tall, thin like bones, with skin that shimmered like snow crystals. Its eyes glowed cold blue. Long icicle-like claws hung from its arms. It didn't move. It didn't blink. It was watching them, feeding on their warmth, feeding on their life. Jack knew he had seconds before it noticed him. He raised his flashlight and aimed the beam directly at its eyes. Flash. The creature screeched and twisted backward, shrieking in pain. Its voice was like cracking glass. Jack didn't wait. He ran forward and slammed the heat flare against the ice prison. Boom! The flare exploded in warmth, cracking the ice. Ilari fell forward into his arms. She was weak but awake. Thaler dropped next, shaking but alive. The creature roared behind him. Jack turned, shielding them. He had no more weapons, no more flares. Only one thing left: fire. He reached into his survival belt and pulled the last resort, a firebomb used for emergency clearing. He looked at Ilari. "Hold your son. Don't let go." Then he threw the firebomb behind them and yelled, "Run! Fwoom! Flames! Roared down the tunnel as they ran. The heat pushed back the cold. The creature screamed once more, then silence. They stumbled into the bunker again. Guards were rushing in now, medics too. Jack handed Thalor to the medics and collapsed beside Aelari. She turned to him, eyes full of tears and disbelief. "You came—" "I told you," Jack said, breathing hard. "I wouldn't let anything take you." She leaned against him. "No one in my life has ever fought for me like that." Jack smiled. "Then maybe it's time someone did." Later that night, the commander visited Jack in the medbay. He didn't yell this time. Instead, he placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "We saw it," he said quietly. "Through the cameras. Whatever that thing was. You were right." Jack nodded. "And it's not the only one. We'll seal the tunnels. Double the guard." Jack sat up. "No, let me help guard them." "You're not a soldier." "No," Jack said. "I'm something better." In a nearby room, Aelari and Thalor slept peacefully for the first time. No ice, no fear, just warmth and a human, keeping watch. The storm outside had finally passed, but inside Aelari's heart, something else had begun. She sat on the bed in the recovery room, brushing her son's soft hair as he lay curled in her lap. His breathing was steady now. His skin had color again. He wasn't shaking anymore. He was safe. Because of him. Across the room, Jack stood silently, his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the snowy horizon outside the glass wall. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just human. But Aelari didn't understand one thing. Why had he risked everything? Her people had always spoken of humans with fear, cold-hearted, selfish, violent. But Jack had run into a death storm for a child that wasn't his. He had fought a monster of ice with fire and will. And now he was still here. Aelari took a deep breath and stood up. She walked over to him slowly. Jack didn't notice at first. He was lost in thought. So many questions raced through his mind. Was the creature dead? Were there more? Would the colony ever accept an alien mother and her child among them? Then he felt a soft touch on his arm. He turned. Aelari stood close, her head slightly lowered. "Why?" she asked in a quiet voice. "Why what? Why did you keep helping me? Helping us, even when it put you in danger?" Jack looked into her eyes. There was no fear there now, just wonder, and pain, and hope. He took a deep breath. "Because," he said gently, "your child cried in the snow, and no one came. I couldn't ignore that. No one deserves to die in the cold, Aelari. Not a child, not a mother, not anyone." Aelari blinked slowly, like she didn't understand his words at first. Then she asked softly, "What do you call this? This thing you feel? This reason you help?" Jack smiled faintly. "It's called compassion." She repeated the word like it was foreign. Compassion. It means caring for someone even if they're not like you. Even if you gain nothing from it. A tear rolled down her cheek. "We don't have that word," she whispered. "In my language, we have words for duty, for survival, for strength. But not that." Jack reached out slowly and wiped the tear from her face. "Then maybe," he said, "it's time your people learn it." Later that evening, the colony dining hall was nearly empty. Jack sat at one of the far tables, sipping broth and thinking. The past few days had been unlike anything he had ever lived through. He had seen fear, death, cold, and something worse, loneliness. Then he felt small footsteps near him. Thalor. The boy climbed onto the bench beside him. "Are you a soldier?" the boy asked. Jack smiled. "Nope. Just a mechanic." "But you fought the monster," Jack chuckled. "Yeah, well, sometimes you have to be more than your job." Thalor looked down at his bowl, then back up at Jack. "Can I call you something?" "Sure." "What?" Thalor's voice was soft. Warm one. Jack froze. He didn't know what to say. It was the same thing the boy had whispered in his sleep in the medbay. Ilari walked over slowly and heard it too. She sat across from them, watching her son lean into Jack's side without hesitation. "He doesn't do that," she said gently. "He's always been afraid of others." Jack put an arm around the boy. "Maybe. He just needed someone to remind him the world isn't always cruel." Ilari smiled, and it was the first time Jack saw her truly smile. Not a tired smile, not a sad one, but a soft, glowing one, full of quiet gratitude. That night, as the stars came out above the snow-covered colony, Ilari stood on the observation deck with her son. Jack joined them, standing beside her without a word. She looked up at the sky. "When I was a girl," she said, "I used to look at those same stars and wonder if kindness existed beyond the cold." Jack looked at her. "And now?" She glanced at him and simply said, "Now I know it does." Snowflakes fell gently from the sky, but this time they didn't feel cruel. They felt peaceful. Jack stood outside the colony gates, adjusting his gloves. The wind was cold, but not biting. The IE storm was long gone, the air was clear. The world for the first time in days was quiet. Behind him, a soft voice called out, "You're leaving?" He turned. Ilari stood there with Thaler beside her, both wrapped in thick cloaks given by the colony's shelter team. Her eyes were calm, but her hands clutched her son's shoulder like she was afraid Jack might vanish if she blinked. Jack smiled gently. "Just for a few hours, heading to the ridge. Gotta check for any leftover tech the scouts lost in the storm." Ilari nodded slowly. "I thought maybe you were going for good." Jack's smile faded. He walked closer. "Do you want me to go?" Ilari looked at Thaler, who was now picking at a piece of ice on the ground, then back at Jack. "No," she said simply. "We don't want that." Jack took a slow breath. "Neither do I." That evening, a small gathering was held inside, the colony's communal hall. Not for celebration, there was still too much to fix, too much to rebuild, but for recognition. Jack stood near the back, watching quietly as the commander spoke to a few council members. Then the microphone was handed to a young guard. He cleared his throat. "We'd lost contact with the scouts. One of us was injured, and then the guard pointed at Jack, ran into a death storm alone to save two strangers." People looked at Jack now. Some nodded, some looked away, ashamed. But then Ilari stepped forward. Her long cloak brushed the floor as she moved, and Thaler followed behind her, holding her hand. Everyone turned silent. Ilari's voice was clear but soft. "I was told humans were hard, that they did not care, that they only helped when it served them." She turned toward Jack. But that was a lie. She held out her hand. "Compassion," she said, smiling, "is the word he taught me. And now, I offer something in return." Jack blinked. "What's that?" Ilari stepped closer, lowering her voice. "A home. Not just for me and my son, but for you too." Jack was stunned. He knelt down and looked at Thaler. "What do you think, little guy?" Thaler beamed. "I already call you family." Weeks passed. The cold returned each night, but Jack no longer felt alone. He had moved into one of the spare colony housing units, next to Ilari and Thaler. He still fixed machines, still worked on repairs, but now when he came home there was warm food on the table, a quiet smile waiting, and a small boy who ran to him every time he opened the door. One evening, as Jack sat by the heater, Thaler crawled into his lap. "Ariao, you my real father now?" he asked. Jack looked at Ilari, who sat across the room watching quietly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gently placed a hand over Thaler's heart. "I don't know what makes someone a real father," Jack said, "but I'll never leave you and I'll protect you, always." Thaler nodded. "That's enough." Later that night, Ilari joined Jack outside under the stars. They stood in silence for a moment. Then she said, There's something I've never told anyone. Jack turned to her. What is it? I was ready to die that night, she whispered. I had nothing left. My tribe was gone. My body was weak. My child was freezing. I had already buried hope. She looked into Jack's eyes, but then you came. And you didn't speak like a hero. You didn't shout or fight. You just gave warmth. Jack swallowed hard. I was just doing what was right. Elari stepped closer. No, you were doing what was human. She reached up and touched his chest lightly. And now, I see that word differently. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. So do I. The snow continued to fall around them, but this time it wasn't a storm, it was a blanket, soft, gentle, warm.